So you've been dying to know the great debate. Trekking poles, are they good or are they bad? As a physical therapist and a hiker and just starting to do some long distance hikes, it's an important and near to my heart kind of issue. Mostly because my husband thinks that this is just as good as this. Are you kidding me? Look at this thing. Wow. Boom. Dang. It even has a left and a right. I'm not biased at all. Oh, hey, Ruby. But actually, I wanted to share the science. So today I'm going to be going over the pros and the cons of using trekking poles for hiking and who could most benefit from them. So first thing, you notice it didn't really help when there was any rock climbing involved. Actually, it kind of hinders. So if you're going to be doing a lot of rocky stuff or via ferratas, probably not the best thing. Ruby, come here. Come on. Come here. She's such a good girl. Come here. Whoa. So, all right. So pro number one, trekking poles in the research, which is fairly good. It's not definitive by any stretch, but there is actual some science behind it. People report feeling safer, more stable, and they have more tolerance to activity. So number one pro is perception. And perception is not nothing. Placebo is a lot. It's about 30% of kind of everything in science. It's this belief. So when people are using trekking poles, especially on uneven surfaces or wearing a backpack or on long distances, they tend to feel more stable, more secure, better balance, and like they can go longer. They can hike longer distances with less fatigue. So that's the number one benefit. And the number two benefit is this idea of being able to offload. So it's very similar in physical therapy. We don't use trekking poles, but maybe we should start because they're cooler. But using a crutch, Ruby, or a cane is been demonstrated time and time again to help offload one lower body limb versus the other. So example, people who would benefit are people who have osteoarthritis, especially in the knees or the hips or the feet. Elbow osteoarthritis, not so much. But when you have a left leg that hurts and you have the right support, when you take a step, you can kind of lean into the opposite side just a little tiny bit, like 5%, 2% of your body weight. And what that does is it changes the ground reaction forces and the stresses on the joints of your lower body. And it basically just hurts a little less. So when you hurt less, you tend to go further. So that's amazing. Number three benefit, which is not a benefit for everyone, but for most of us, this is a benefit. When you're using two trekking poles, to be able to maneuver them, you kind of have to overdo your arm swing just a bit. And you fall into a rhythm, and it's almost easier with that rhythm to move faster. So you use your upper body more, you kind of plant a little bit, and you use your lats to kind of pull you up the mountain a bit. And what you end up happening is having about anywhere from 5 to 20% increased calorie burn. Now, I know exactly what you're saying. Not everybody wants to burn more calories. And that's true. This is actually a potential con for some people. If you are calorie starved, when you just can't eat enough for the hike that you're doing, then maybe you don't want to use trekking poles. Okay, and then the fourth one. The fourth benefit is you can hit bears with a stick. Just kidding. Don't do that. It'll just piss them off. I forgot the fourth one. Let me look. Yeah, the most obvious one of all. It's so obvious I forgot to even think about it. It's balance. So, again, could be a con, like you saw me on trying to climb the little rock here, not helpful. It didn't help my balance. It actually hindered it because there's extra stuff in my way. If you're on a really narrow ledge that doesn't require, that doesn't have enough space, like with the poles, they might just get in the way. But for most of us, most of the time, having multiple points of support, with the two trekking poles, you can could have potentially 4 points of support at all times, which is better than just 2. So there we go. Now that brings me to the cons. The cons of trekking pole. I can't believe there are any. I never thought I'd say this because then my husband might have something to say. But the cons of trekking poles, I think most of the time you have to think about it like there's mitigation and there's adaptation. So trekking poles are really great for mitigation, meaning you got osteoarthritis, you want to mitigate that risk. You're getting older. Everyone who gets older, their balance, their reaction time and their balance, their inner ear sort of vestibular sense, it just decreases. Vision decreases. All of these senses work together in our brain to help us stay upright. So at some point we do have to think about mitigation, but if you're trying to grow, you're trying to adapt, you're trying to challenge yourself to get better balance, then using the poles is probably not going to help because you're relying on them like a crutch. So that's the first con, is that if you're trying to improve your sense of balance, these aren't going to necessarily propel you leaps and bounds ahead. I will go back originally and say again, for most people, most of the time, this is actually going to give them a confidence to go out and do some things. And whereas if they just stay home, then okay, the net negative is even worse. So it's very complicated. It's not just like a yes or no kind of thing. The second con is that you don't really want to use them all the time. Sometimes you're out on a hike and you're like, oh, I want to use them because it'll help me get in the rhythm. But then sometimes you just want to chill and you just want to walk peacefully and not make all these clacky noises, and you just kind of want to relax with your hike. So you have to stop, you have to take your backpack off. Nobody likes taking their backpack off. You gotta fumble with them, you gotta get them to shrink down again. Sometimes they're annoying. Then you gotta like strap them on and put your backpack on. I've gone through mini hikes where I've had them on the back of my backpack. I never even bothered to take them off. So it's just extra weight for no reason. The other con is that it makes it really hard to handle a camera. So if you're a nature photographer or you're like me and you have 50,000 photos on your iPhone camera roll. Though I did get a really cool carnivorous mushroom yesterday. They kind of hamper your ability to take photos when you want. Okay, and then the last con is they're expensive. I mean, you really can just get a stick. You can have this stick that you find on the street, on the ground, and you use it for that balance support. These bad boys, my favorite, the Cadillacs, they're like 150 bucks. But I tell you what, they're really nice. So that is a potential downside of them, is the cost. Yeah, so it's kind of complicated. And honestly, if you're gonna get trekking poles, the ones that you get, you're gonna wanna actually use them and like them. And when you hang on to them and they've got a good grip, because otherwise they're just gonna sit on the back of your pack and you're never ever gonna use them. There is a big tradition in hiking where if people are done with the trekking poles, they just kind of leave them on the trail. So I've actually found, last month I found a really nice one that someone had left there for a couple weeks. Because my husband used mine because he didn't want to get his own. But then when we hiked the Tour de Mont Blanc, he definitely wanted them. All right, so in summary, trekking poles are good for mitigation of risk. They help people who generally have problems like osteoarthritis or Parkinson's, or people who are going on longer hikes than they're used to. They hurt if you're going over a lot of rocky terrain, or if you're a nature photographer, or if you're in the point of life where you're trying to get better at your balance. It's not going to help necessarily, unless it means the question of you're either not going to do it at all or you're going to do it with the sticks. If you're not going to do it at all without the sticks, use the sticks, because that's better off. And watch this next video to see how my husband decided to employ his hiking pole, aka my hiking pole, as a special device. Oh my God, that was